liberals need to stand up for liberal principles. This is what I said on last week's show. Obviously, I got a lot of hate for it, but all I'm saying is that liberal principles like freedom of speech, freedom to practice any religion you want without fear of violence, freedom to leave a religion, equality for women, equality for minorities, including homosexuals. These are liberal principles, but then when you say in the Muslim world this is what's lacking, then they get upset.
They'll criticize white theocracy, they'll criticize Christians. When you want to talk about the treatment of women and homosexuals and free thinkers and public intellectuals in the Muslim world, I would argue that liberals have failed us. And we have been sold this meme of Islamophobia, where every criticism of the doctrine of Islam gets conflated with bigotry toward Muslims as people.
Right.
And that is it's intellectually ridiculous.
Because it's the only religion that acts like the mafia, that will fucking kill you if you say the wrong thing, draw the wrong picture, or write the wrong book.
So when I say there's a Muslim problem in the world, I basically say, why don't the good Muslims, that I believe outnumber the bad Muslims probably 8 or 9 to 1,
or more,
why don't they, the Muslim community throughout the world, speak out more forcefully against the jihadists?
Well, there's something out there that brings a level of hostility that I've never seen in any religion. I mean, you can say what you want about the Quran, you can say what you want. There's something there. There is tremendous hatred, and tremendous hatred of us. The Quran is very interesting. A lot of people say it teaches love, and there's something there that teaches some very negative vibe. There's a lot of hatred there someplace. Now, I don't know if that's from the Quran. I don't know if that's from, someplace else. But there's tremendous hatred out there that I've never seen anything like it.
It's from a former Muslim who said, and I quote, "Muslims are normally good people like everyone else. But then they read the Quran. Then they become a killing machine." The woman who said that knows what she's talking about. She's a former Muslim herself who's now facing death threats for spreading the truth about Islam.
Islam is often presented as a very simple religion. It's just submission to Allah. But if you dig a little deeper, you find out in the Quran, Surah 4, verse 65, that submission to Allah requires complete obedience to all of Muhammad's decisions. And that's where Islam gets a lot more complicated, because Muhammad's decisions are spread across thousands of stories in the Hadith. Most Christians don't have the time, or the sources, or the desire to go through all this material and figure out what Islam teaches. No problem, that's what we're here for. We're happy to serve that role. But we should all keep in mind that there are more than 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, and that Islam places a strong emphasis on preaching and winning converts. Chances are we're not going to be there when your Muslim friends preach Islam to you, or when your children go off to college and hear about how wonderful Islam is, not only from their Muslim friends, but also from their professors. If you really want to understand the rape and slaughter being committed in the name of Allah by the Islamic State, you have to study the history of Muhammad and his companions, a history found in the Hadith and the Sirah literature. But you can get a pretty good outline of the Islamic State's message and tactics by reading the Quran, which Muslims believe to be the direct word of Allah. Surah 9, verse 29. If you've never understood why Christians and other religious minorities are so horribly mistreated in places like Iraq and Egypt and Pakistan, the reason for the abuse is found in the Quran. Allah commands Muslims, once they are in the majority, to violently subjugate Christians and Jews. Allah says in 9:29, "Fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day." Notice it says, fight those who do not believe, not fight in self-defense. This is a command to fight people based on their beliefs. Fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which hath been forbidden by Allah and his messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, from among the people of the book. People of the book are Jews and Christians, until they pay the jizya with willing submission and feel themselves subdued. Muslims are commanded to fight us until we pay tribute to them and feel ourselves subdued. We have to acknowledge our inferiority and accept our status as second-class citizens who don't have the same rights as Muslims. This command has probably led to more oppression than any other command in history.
وطرد المسيحيين من العراق.
طرد المسيحيين رفضوا دفع الجزية يا رشيد.
إذا ينبغي أن يعطوا الجزية عن يد وهم صاغرون.
أليست رحمة عندما يتركونهم يمشون ويستطيعون قتلهم؟ أليست رحمة؟
In the Bible, Jesus says that God loves everyone. In the Quran, not so much. Surah 3, verse 32. Say, obey Allah and the Apostle, but if they turn back, then surely Allah does not love the unbelievers. According to the Quran, Allah only loves obedient Muslims. I wonder why ISIS doesn't seem to have much love for non-Muslims.
Both born and raised in the United States, a country whose way of life they say they hate. And if you are not a Muslim, they count you as a disbeliever. Their mission? To terrorize you.
We're commanded to terrorize the disbelievers. And this is a religion, like I said.
Commanded to terrorize the disbelievers.
The Quran says very clearly in the Arabic language, Turhibuna. This means terrorize them. It's a command from Allah.
So you're commanded.
It's a terrorizing.
Terrorize.
Doesn't mean
anybody.
You define terrorism as going and killing an innocent civilian. That's what you were. I define terrorism as making them fearful so that they think twice before they go rape your mother or kill your brother or go onto your land and try to steal your resources.
I love Osama bin Laden. Wallahi, I love him like I can't begin to tell you because I haven't seen that he's really done anything wrong from the Sharia. I love him like more than I love myself.
What they want is U.S. forces to be defeated for a Muslim holy land stretching from China to Rome. And yes, they yearn for the day Israel will vanish.
So you would like Israel to be bombed?
I would like to see Israel wiped off the map. I would like to see a mushroom cloud over it.
But make no mistake, they want you to become a Muslim. They want Americans to die.
I would not do it myself. That's what I say.
Believe it or not, Allah's complete lack of love for non-Muslims plays a role in how non-Muslims are to be treated. Surah 48, verse 29. Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, and those who are with him are severe against unbelievers and merciful among themselves. Those who are with Muhammad, i.e. Muslims, are severe against whom? Against unbelievers. They're merciful to whom? Only to their fellow Muslims. But politicians and the media just can't figure out why ISIS is so severe against non-Muslims.
نحن إرهابيون والإرهاب طريق الكتاب ليعلم والصف أننا إرهابي وأننا مرعبون وأعدوا لهم ما استطعتم من قوة ومن رباط الخيل ترهبون به عدو الله وعدوكم فالإرهاب فريضة في دين الله
بدون ما يقاتلوا قاتلهم فاستعن بالله وقاتلهم فليسمعها العلماء فاستعن بالله وقاتلهم متى؟ عندما يقاتلونك؟ لا، عندما يرفضون دخول الإسلام ويرفضون دخول تطبيق دفع الجزية. تمام؟ عندها لا معنى لبقائهم متنعمين في هذه الحياة الدنيا يأكلون من مال الله ويكفرون به. لا، غصب عنهم من نخضعهم لسلطان الله ولا نكرههم في الدخول في دين الله.
There are lots of ways to be severe against unbelievers. Here's one, Surah 4, verse 24. Also forbidden are women already married, except those captives and slaves whom your right hands possess. This may be confusing without the historical context, which you can read in Sunan Abu Dawud 2150. When Muhammad won the Battle of Autas, Allah had already revealed that Muslims were free to rape their female captives. But at Autas, the Muslim army captured certain women along with their husbands, and some of the Muslims started wondering if raping these women counted as adultery because they were married. That's when Allah revealed Surah 4, verse 24, which says that married women are indeed forbidden as sex partners unless they're your captives. If they're your captives, rape them all you want. Allah couldn't conceivably care less that they're married. Heard about any groups raping their female captives recently?
Muttaqin from Kumani. How much? 15 years old. How much? Yalla. 20. How much? Come on! Takbir! Allahu Akbar! Takbir! Allahu Akbar! How much?
Women who have endured horrific abuse, acid attacks, a form of violence against women in that part of the world. Tonight, Nick Schifrin reports from Lahore, Pakistan, where a rare group of victims is vowing not to hide in shame.
It was 3 years ago that Saira Liaquat was maimed by her husband. Married off at 16, she refused to move into his house, and he threw acid on her. These girls in Afghanistan were attacked for going to school. Down this road in Pakistan, 5 girls were buried alive for wanting to choose their own husbands. Usually, attackers go free, like Saira's husband. It is the women who are shunned by society.
Women in our society is a commodity. This is how I see it. They're treated as a piece of furniture.
As many as 80% of Pakistani women suffer from domestic violence.
Violence against women is especially common in rural areas, and advocates say in order to make things better, there has to be huge improvements in education and economic conditions. Are women second-class citizens in Pakistan?
Yes. I'm not even sure that we are considered citizens by the police, sections of the judiciary.
As for Saira, she still has her smile, and her family supports her. But most of the thousands of victims of these crimes aren't so lucky.
الموت أرحم لي إنني أموت ولا أبقى. أنا أفضل أن أكون عند عمي ولا أفضل عندهم يقتلوني يهددوني يقولوا لي إذا رحت عند عمك بنقتلك. يعني إيش هذا؟ إيش تهديد؟ يهددوا الأطفال. يرضيكم زيي أنا كذا ها يزوجوني يرضيكم. وكمان أنا عادي القتل عندي عادي. ولا أعيش عندهم ولا أعيش عندهم.
Saida is just one girl in the most shocking set of statistics in Afghanistan. 60% of women are still married as children, often at 9 or 10. Under Afghan law, girls can't marry under 16, but the law's ignored by families and the government. Saida's father died when she was little, and her brothers claimed her as their property. They sold her to the old man as his wife.
If he saw a shoe or a stick, anything, he would beat me with it. I spent 7 years with him. As if I was sitting on a hot stove all the time. I had 4 miscarriages because of the beating and the stress.
He sold her, forced her into having sex with other men.
He would say I was his daughter. He actually sold me to 3 or 4 people. You understand what I mean? He took money from these people. I would cry and say, for God's sake, what's happening to me?
Saida's childhood has been destroyed. She's 17 and can't read or write.
Violée, soumise au nom d'Allah, c'est l'histoire de Samia Sharif, une Algérienne qui a fui son pays avec ses enfants pour échapper à la violence conjugale et à l'intégrisme islamique.
L'histoire de Samia ressemble à celle de bien d'autres femmes victimes de l'intégrisme islamique. À 16 ans, son père l'a forcée à se marier. Son mari, qui avait le double de son âge, l'a battue, violée durant des années.
Quand je me plaignais à mes parents que leur CI bat, ils me violent. Ils te violent pas, c'est ton mari. Prends son Dieu, laisse-toi faire. Laisse-toi faire. Laisse-toi faire à lui, c'est que s'il te bat, c'est parce qu'il t'aime et puis il veut t'éviter l'enfer.
Stop and really think about this one. How desperate must a 16-year-old girl be to actually set herself on fire? She was hoping that her life would improve after the United States went into Afghanistan and kicked the Taliban out of power, but it didn't. This is Shireen's story. She is one of many women who disfigure themselves to make the abuse stop. That doesn't even make sense, does it? It will when you watch this report.
For years now, the numbers coming into the women's ward have been rising. But these aren't the victims of accidental fires. Just in the last week, 5 women were brought here with self-inflicted burns. 16-year-old Shireen set herself on fire to escape her violent husband. She says she was beaten every day of her 12-month marriage, but police did nothing.
The police came to the hospital in the morning and asked me why I did this. After I told them the reason, it was only after that the police finally arrested him.
With a judiciary and a police force that rarely act against domestic abuse, Afghan women have found an extreme way to force the hand of the authorities. Says that they're seeing more and more cases like Shireen's.
We had 65 cases.
Now we have 77 cases in this time.
Shireen's husband is still refusing to divorce her, but she said her injuries have brought her some relief. They all refused to speak to us on camera, but off camera they told us their wives had been injured in cooking accident. At the age of 11, she set herself on fire on what would have been her wedding day.
I did not want to get married because he was very old for me, so that's why I set myself on fire. I was thinking it would be better to burn rather than being forced to marry an old man.
Afghan law sets the legal age for marriage at 16, but it's rarely enforced. It was Basira's mother who arranged the marriage for her young daughter. She says she had little choice.
My husband was killed by the Taliban and my life became very hard. After a while I found someone who wanted to marry Basira, but she set herself on fire. Now we have to look after Basira. If she was healthy, I could marry her to someone else and we could get some money to survive.
2 years on, and Basira still needs more operations to regain full mobility.
Do you think that your life is still better now than if you had been married to the older man?
I do not regret setting myself on fire because I'm happy. Now I have rescued myself from that old man.
I paid my debt to the drug lords by marrying off my 5 daughters to them. I had no other way to pay the drug lords' debts. Otherwise, they threatened to cut my head off.
The farmer told us he still owes $12,000.
I can't do anything now. I've run out of daughters and no one will pay for me. I'm just old meat.
Stories like this are increasingly common here. The girls bartered for the drug debts are known as opium flowers. Many of the Afghan women we met told us that the promises of greater freedoms and protection have not been kept. They say the space that opened up for women after the fall of the Taliban is under attack.
Our women have been taken as slaves and sold into slavery at the market in Raqqa. Gentlemen, as we speak, there is a genocide going on against the Yazidis.
18-year-old Jinan is one of those Yazidi girls captured and sold into slavery by the Islamic State organization.
It was a difficult time. They tortured us. They wanted to convert us by force, and they demanded that we pray and read the Quran. When we refused, they beat us. They chained us outside in full sun and made us drink water with dead mice floating in it. And they threatened to use electricity to torture us.
She describes being taken to a slave market among dozens of other women.
These men are not human. They think only of death, of killing.
Ein Ehemann sticht auf offener Straße über 50 Mal auf seine Frau ein, nur weil sie ihn verlassen wollte. Die Polizei schaut zu. Die Frau überlebt mit schwersten Verletzungen. Gewaltexzesse im Namen der Ehre und im Namen Allahs.
Sweden is on the edge of a brutal collapse due to a wave of entitled immigrants, raping Sweden's women at a rate of 53.2%.
Som begår overfallsvoldtekter fungerer veldig marginalt. De ofte arbeidsløse, de kommer fra traumatiserte land. Noen av dem har I hvert fall de siste 5 årene vært asylsøkere.
Welcome to Sweden. This is the #1 rape capital of Europe. Some say that this is because Sweden is very progressive and aware of destructive patriarchal norms, where we import thousands of people from countries in the Middle East and Africa, places that don't really have the best views on women's rights. But it doesn't matter who is right. We will never know who is right, because we aren't allowed to talk about it. Here in Sweden, everything is considered racist.
Muslims in Egypt are kidnapping and raping Christian girls and forcing them to convert to Islam, and then when their parents come looking for them, the Muslim government says, well, too bad, they've converted to Islam. The same thing is happening in Pakistan. So what do you mean by we? Are you talking, do you mean we as only really nice Muslims? Well, that's the problem. You can't say you're only identifying Muslims as the really nice Muslims, or perhaps you mean Muhammad didn't do anything to the Christians. I don't know.
I got stacks of articles of women being pulled out of cars, raped, children being raped. They're like, well, that's part of the radical Islamic culture, to rape your daughter.
Und wir waren 3 Leute waren oben, Agim war unten, Agim hat Licht ausgemacht, hat sie gefickt und dann hat er entjungfert, die war Jungfrau, fickt euch das mal. Jungfrau, Alter. Und wir waren noch 6 Leute oben auf Bett, Alter. Und der krach, reich. Und wir, Alter, oben,
geruht, weißt du, zuerst hat sie sich gewehrt und so, und dann riss mir Beine, klack, also eine Bein da, eine da, die hat danach geweint und die konnten nicht mehr, wir wie Schweine haben die angespuckt, mir voll der Bastard noch blühen und so, richtig dreckig, weißt du, richtig Metzler, boah. Und da hast du ihn ausgesteckt, ne? Junge, das war eine Jungfrau, wir haben die zu sitzt kaputt gemacht. Ausschnitt gekriegt.
What about people who try to stop the Islamic State from establishing Sharia? Surah 5, verse 33. The punishment of those who wage war against Allah and His Apostle and strive to make mischief in the land is only this, that they should be murdered or crucified, or their hands and their feet should be cut off on opposite sides, or they should be imprisoned. This shall be as a disgrace for them in this world, and in the hereafter they shall have a grievous chastisement. Notice that there are several penalties, including death, crucifixion, and dismemberment, for the vague crime of making mischief in the land. Since the crime is vague, Muslim groups like ISIS can pack all kinds of offenses into this verse.
The ensuing brutality would become sobering commentary on how little Afghanistan had changed, despite more than a decade of Western engagement. Farkhunda falls for the first time and screams, echoing the words of her attackers. Video continues. Worshippers have joined in, some beggars and pilgrims who have been known to frequent the shrine. Children's voices are heard. The message: defend Islam. Don't be an infidel. Farkhunda's body is placed into the path of a car. She's run over, dragged for some 300 feet. Then they throw Farkhunda's body onto the riverbed. The men hurl stones at her, over and over again. They set the body on fire, using their own scarves as fuel. Farkhunda's clothes are so soaked with blood that they do not light.
When Muhammad was completely outnumbered, he had to put up with idolaters. But once he had the most powerful army in Arabia, the message of Islam became convert or die. Surah 9 verse 5 contains Allah's final marching orders on dealing with idolaters. When the sacred months have passed, slay the idolaters wherever you find them, and take them captive, and besiege them, and prepare for them each ambush. But if they repent and establish worship and pay the poor due, then leave their way free. Lo, Allah is forgiving, merciful. So kill them unless they convert to Islam. Sound familiar? But ISIS doesn't just attack unbelievers. Muslims are also targeted. Why is that? Surah 9 verse 73. O Prophet, strive hard against the unbelievers and the hypocrites, and be unyielding to them, and their abode is hell, and evil is the destination. The Arabic for strive hard here is a form of the word jihad, so Muslims are commanded to wage jihad not only against unbelievers, but also against hypocrites, people who claim to be Muslims but aren't doing what Allah tells them to do. The penalty for hypocrisy can vary depending on the severity of the hypocrisy, but when Muslims deviate from core Islamic doctrine, they find themselves in the apostate category, and the penalty for apostasy is death. So when ISIS kills Muslims who aren't adhering to central Muslim doctrines, they're just doing what Allah commands. But what about all the peaceful, westernized Muslims who condemn killing in the name of Allah? Sadly, Islam isn't defined by westernized Muslims. It's defined by Allah, who says in Surah 9, verse 111, Surely Allah has bought of the believers their persons and their property for this, that they shall have the garden. They fight in Allah's way, so they slay and are slain. Allah defines believers as those who slay and get slain. They keep killing until they get killed. Doesn't sound much like our peaceful Muslim neighbors, but it sounds an awful lot like ISIS. Muslims are only allowed to seek peace when they aren't in a position to violently subjugate their enemies. Allah says in Surah 47, verse 35, "Be not weary and faint-hearted, crying for peace, when you should be uppermost, for Allah is with you and will never put you in loss for your good deeds." When the Muslim community is strong enough to slay the idolaters and to subjugate the Jews and Christians and to fight the hypocrites, peace is not an option. If you seek peace when you should be uppermost, you won't have much ground to stand on when ISIS knocks on your door and tells you that you're a hypocrite. This final verse might seem out of place because it's not about rape or slaughter, but you can't really understand how the verses about rape and slaughter fit into Islam as a whole without understanding Surah 2, verse 106. Whatever communications we abrogate or cause to be forgotten, we bring one better than it or like it. Do you not know that Allah has power over all things? People in the West have been trying to condemn the Islamic State by quoting peaceful verses of the Quran. How can you guys call yourselves Muslims when the Quran says there's no compulsion in religion? But those peaceful verses were revealed before Allah commanded His followers to slay idolaters and to subjugate Jews and Christians and to fight hypocrites. So the most important verse you need to know if you want to understand the Islamic State is Surah 2, verse 106, which lays out the doctrine of abrogation. Earlier verses get abrogated or canceled by later verses, which means that versions of Islam that oppose the sort of violence being committed by the Islamic State are now obsolete.
Muslims are welcome to live and to be part of any society, but they have to reject these kinds of beliefs. The burden is on Muslims to deal with their own religion and find solutions to these doctrines in it that are producing more terrorists than any other faith nowadays. Muslims are not dying because the West rejected them. It's the opposite. Westerners are dying because they welcomed Muslims among them. Welcoming Muslims and ignoring the problems in Islam is not a solution. It's just another problem. It's called political correctness. Note that my parents are Muslims and I love them. But still, I say the truth, and the truth hurts.
You are going to make millions upon millions of Muslims very, very angry.
I'm not trying to offend Muslims. I love them. Those Muslims are my family.
But you are going to offend people and you are going to put your life in danger, aren't you, by doing this?
Some of them will be offended. Some of them will be offended. But I am sure, I believe that many of them will wake up.
Some of them will try to kill you.
They will. They will. If they will kill me, they will kill this body. But the question, what about my soul? What about my ideas? What about my beliefs that I shared with everybody? Will they be able to kill this? I don't think so.
I want to ask you, of course, to pray for me and pray for my family. They were under lots of pressure. The last time I talked to my dad, he told me, I asked him to disown me because I know how difficult this is for them. And he told me this is not an option. I know their hearts. They're good people. But unfortunately, their God doesn't have a minimum amount of humanity. He unskinned their humanity. He wants them to be beasts. Our problem is with their God. Our problem is with their ideology. Please to understand the difference between Islam and Muslims. Please, Muslims are wonderful people. The worst criminal terrorist Muslim has moralities, responsibilities, logics than the God of the Quran.
This woman is on a mission. She's not a Muslim, and her Muslim dress is a disguise. Her mission is for Muslims to know what is in the Quran, because she says if more Muslims knew what was in the Quran, more would leave Islam. Mona Walter came to Sweden from Somalia as a war refugee when she was 19. She says she was excited about joining a modern European nation with equal rights for women. But as a young Muslim woman, that was not the Sweden she encountered. In fact, she says it was in Sweden where she first experienced radical Islam on a daily basis.
In Somalia, you're just a Muslim. You're just born into Muslim country without knowing the Quran.
Walter says she grew up in Somalia never having read the Quran.
So I didn't understand what I was part of. I didn't know who Muhammad was. I didn't know who Allah was.
She says she discovered that Allah is a God who hates, and that Islam is not a religion of peace.
Bloodthirsty man. He was a terrible man. And they can read that in his biography, what he did to Jews, how he raped women, how he killed people. I mean, he killed everyone who didn't agree with him.
Discouraged, she left Islam and became an atheist, until one day a family relative encouraged her to read the Bible. She still remembers the first time she read Matthew chapter 5, verse 44, where Jesus said to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.
It was very strange for me, love your enemy, because in Islam you have to kill your enemy. Kill your enemy and kill everyone who refuses Islam. But Jesus Christ, it was all about love and peace and forgiveness and tolerance. And for some reason I needed that.
But in politically correct Sweden, Mona Walter has come under attack for simply telling Muslims what is in the Quran.
And I've been called Islamophobe, and yeah, you've been bought, you're a house nigger and stuff like that, terrible things.
She has also been called a racist.
This so-called ISIS or Al-Shabaab or Boko Haram, they're not extremists, they're not fanatical, or they're just a good Muslim who follow the teachings of Islam. The Prophet Muhammad, he did that. They're doing just what he did.
But there's a little booklet here that has been made available to us called Islam, Religion of Peace or War. It is fantastic. It has direct quotes from the Quran, direct quotes from the Hadith, carefully researched biographical information about Muhammad, what he did, who he was, what he believed, and it's all here. Islam, you need to know this. I mean, this thing is something else.
And I was chased by Muslim terrorists across America. And I lived for the next 10 years of my life in America in hiding. Under a false name, my kids are not able to go to school. I don't have a job, I don't have a name, I don't have a social security, I don't have anything. There were times where my kids are afraid because they know, they had to be told the truth. If you were taken back to Egypt, and if I die, someone is coming to get you. And for the next 10 years, I hated the Muslims. I hated the Muslim community. I didn't want to hear anything about Islam or Muslims or anything like that. I just wanted to raise my kids. Until God opened my eyes that there are people that need freedom, that need to have the choice, and need to be told the truth, and no one tells them the truth. Most of them are just like me. They know the truth, don't have a way out. Around the world, not only in America, are women like me. They do what they're told because they look at their kids and say, if I say something, you're gonna be taken away from me. I'm gonna lose you. I'm not gonna have the right to stand and defend you. I might die, and many of them do. The freedom I thought I had by just coming to America is the freedom of the law, of the Constitution of America, which I appreciate and I believe and I follow and I commend and all. But if it wasn't until I understood the freedom that Christ gave me that I was able to act on the freedom that we have in America. With that, we need to understand our enemy. Our enemy is not the Muslims, it is the laws of Islam. Islam looks at people as groups. People don't matter to Allah. They don't matter to Allah. He can erase them and bring many others. That's what Quran teaches. That's why Muslims don't understand human rights. Pamela, this is why. They don't understand that they are, as individuals, valuable in God's eyes. They don't understand that you, Americans, respect people because they are people. They need to learn. We need to teach them, but we also need to not allow them to change our laws. This is the law of the land. You respect us. And this is what the Bible teaches, and that's why I stand by it. Thank you.
Well, when I saw 9/11, I realized that there's a lot more to my faith than I'd been taught. Now, I had been taught that Islam was a religion of peace, and I saw my duty as a Muslim to be peaceful and to spread peace. And all the Muslims around me were the same way. But then we were confronted with this very real Islam on television as well, and I had to reconcile the two. And I did that by looking into the pages of history. Who is Muhammad? What does the original Islam look like? And when I read Muhammad with my own eyes, instead of hearing about him from my parents or at the mosque, when I read the biography with my own eyes, I learned a lot that caused me to question my faith. Muslims don't believe they can hear revelatory messages from God during prayer or anything like that. Muslims believe the only way they're going to hear from God is in dreams. And they actually have a special prayer called Salat Istikhara, asking God to give them dreams. So it's the common way they receive guidance from Allah, or that's what they ask for anyway. Now, why is this happening? Well, you have so many Muslims around the Middle East who've tried Islam, and they've realized it's failed. That's what's happening in Iran after the revolution in the 70s. They said this isn't working, and now they're coming to Christ in droves. Same with in Egypt before the Arab Spring. A survey was done where well over 90% of the people there believed in Allah. But now, after the Muslim Brotherhood has come and given it a shot, another survey was done where about 70% believe in Allah. It's just the four of us. My father was in the US Navy for 24 years, and so we moved around a lot. And we were very, very close, and it cost a lot. I haven't had a relationship with my parents like I had. It's been very painful every day. My mother is in tears. It's been 8 years. She's in tears every day, and their reputation has gone down in the community. Their honor was built on their Islamic reputation. Well, their son became a Christian, so I've hurt them quite a bit, but Christ says, if you love your mother and father more than me, you're not worthy of me. And I think that the Lord will introduce His truth if we make these kinds of sacrifices to the larger community. Well, I would say that we should remember what Jesus says in the book of Matthew chapter 7, ask and you shall receive. Seek and you shall find. Knock and the door will be open. If you're truly seeking God, you can come on your knees before Him. Look, He loves you. He created this world with you in mind, and He died on the cross for you. He wants to reveal Himself to you. If you come to Him, you put Him first, and you say, I don't care who I have to lose. I don't care what it does to my life. I want to know God. He will find you. Please do pray for my family. Please pray for Christ to be made known in the Muslim world. So many people approach Muslims with a lack of knowledge, ignorance, fear. Whereas Christ was willing to love and die for His enemies. We have not been given a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and love. And so that's why I've written this book to hopefully introduce people to Islam from the inside so they can start loving Muslims and still upholding the truth, not compromising the gospel, but loving to the point of even death.
Amen. If you want to get a copy of the book, it's called Seeking Allah, Finding Jesus, and it's available wherever books are sold. Thank you. You're very courageous.
Thank you, brother.
God bless you.
One thing that Islam is doing to defeat you is causing you to be coward and fearful, to stand up and speak against the invasion of Islamization which is going on in your country. Stand up before it's late. North Africa is the part of Africa which first embraced Christianity. It was defeated by intimidation and threat. If you get afraid today, within time, you will find your children and your grandchildren being Muslims and torturing other people. Stand up now and defeat the challenge of the global Islamization agenda. And that is what I'm telling you. If you will find that Islam has got a challenge which is on a door, and instead of standing up We are not going to stand up in arms, but we are going to stand up in the Word of God. Let's not fear to open up and stand and speak the truth. Otherwise, if we don't stand now, it will be too late within coming years. One thing which I want to leave with you, all of people watching me, is that if you know that what you are doing is right, stand boldly and proclaim it. Don't fear. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a high time. If it is the truth, let's stand and speak it. If we are the light of the world, it's the time we shine before it's late. God bless you. Thank you very much.